Yes, just one sec.
No problem, sir.
Yeah. Hello.
Perfect. Hi, sir.
Can you hear me?
Yes, very clearly.
Hi.
Hi, sir.
Okay.
So, sir,
So,
just for for the audience, and this couldn't have been a more fitting finale to this 3-day virtual Grassroot India tour that we organized with India Avenue, and Motilal helped them in setting this up with for the investors in Australia and New Zealand. Um, so over the
mhm.
last 3 days, we have been meeting with the regulators, someone Sanjeev Sanyal from the Ministry of Finance. We interacted with a few corporates, including the likes of ICICI Bank,
Mm,
Astral, Scots, and also some experts on
mm,
pharma, so on and so forth. So we thought that there is no better way to end than to have one of the thoughtful minds on Indian investing to share his wisdom on how he's seeing the market. Just for the audience, Mr. Agarwal is a joint
mm.
MD of Motilal Oswal, and he's been the man behind the strong. My camera got Mukundan, am I audible now? Perfect.
Mm.
So, from the thought process that Motilal has with respect to research, a lot of credit goes to Mr. Agarwal, and he's also been championing this QGLP, which is quality, growth, longevity, and favorable price framework for our asset management firm.
मेल में आया होगा मेल.
He has been authoring the annual Motilal Oswal Wealth Creation Study since its inception in 1996, and is
हमने चल.
considered as and popularly also considered the Warren Buffett of India. So today, sir,
No, don't mention that. Yeah.
we would want your thoughts on 3-4 pointers, and we will then open the question and answer session as well. But if you can share your thoughts on 4 points to start with. One is in your assessment,
Mm,
uh, the corporate performance over the last 5-6 years. Then what should we
mm.
look at when we are valuing companies in India? Is there any secret that you have kind of unearthed? And what industries are attractive in India today and why? And if there are any drivers of success that investors can take from you from investing in India. So with that, sir, I hand over the call to you.
Mhm. Yeah. So, thank you very much for this opportunity to talk to all the esteemed investors from New Zealand and Australia. So it's an honor to talk to all of them. But I think they have done a wonderful job of talking to actually people on the ground, because we are stuck here in Mumbai. So now perception is far better of the guys who are talking to the people on the ground like Sanyal and all the corporates. So that will give a much better feel. In fact, that's what I'm trying to do. That among my friends who are the guys in various positions, because it's a very large country, very difficult time, very unusual time. So forming a view becomes very difficult, and then stock market has its own tantrum. When you think market is going to go down, it actually shoots up by 3%. So whatever views you have formed, suddenly it gets challenged. So it's a very confusing environment, and God has been great, and the markets are better than most of the analysts they were thinking. People like us, money managers, definitely markets are better than that. But coming to your first question, I think that mm, corporate performance in Modi era. The one of the thing is that in last 6 years, the corporate profits in aggregate, and of course, as percentage of GDP, it has gone down. 2014 till 2019, or maybe even 2020, the corporate profit, which used to be about say 4% of GDP, has come down to less than 3% of GDP by the time it got over, say, 5 years and 6 years. And so absolute profit has barely moved. Aggregate corporate profit has more or less remained at the same level, whereas GDP has been expanding at 10-12% in nominal terms. So my corporate profit to GDP has been continuously coming down. So that has been one of the thing, but the P multiple during the same period has been shooting up. So that led to some kind of a performance of 4-5%, 6% in the index. But bulk of those optical performance in local currency is because of the re-rating rather than growth in aggregate corporate profits. So that's been the story of 6 years. And the reasons are, we went through a major reforms in this period. The first, it started with demonetization. Then they brought RERA for the real estate. Then they brought IBC code for the insolvency. Then they brought finally GST. And while all these four were on, I think the economy broadly remained constrained about the liquidity because they wanted to bring down inflation also. So they brought down the inflation successfully, but in the process, they dried up the liquidity. So all the businessmen, corporates, they were running here and there for the liquidity. So they brought down the inflation to bring down the interest rates. But I think it is a counterproductive. I'm not a macroeconomist, but what I've seen, what I've experienced, it was a very liquidity constrained kind of environment. Now in last 12 months, this liquidity situation has completely gone upside down in the sense that we were not having enough surplus liquidity in the system. Now there is ample liquidity. So from here onwards, what happens, we will see. But the last 5-6 years has been very liquidity constrained, and hence the corporate profits have not grown. I mean, you can ascribe reasons to different things like even corporate performance. Corporate performance in lot of sectors like banking. Banking is one of the largest, and there we saw a lot of PSU banks, which were about 70-75% of the total profits in maybe 13-14. That has literally become negative. So that has hurt it big time. From about $10 billion, 60-70,000 crores of profit in 14, that got actually must be $4-5 billion of negative profits in 2019. So that had a huge impact on the total profitability, and hence the entire segment got wiped out. We had intense competition in the telecom, and from there also the profits got completely wiped out. Then we had all the infra spends, all the infra companies, capital goods companies. There also things were not very good because there were no new power plants, no new cement plants, and steel plants. So the general capex in the system was low. So all the capital goods companies, they also suffered, and all the commodity companies' profits also came down. So all in all, it was a very flat kind of corporate performance in the Modi era. So that was one highlight of last 6 years. So things do change. I mean, that doesn't mean that what is going to happen in next 4-5 years can be predicted based on what happened in last 5 years. Clearly, but markets are far more optimistic, and they remain optimistic on the future of this country, future of the aggregate corporates, and that's what drives the market. The utter optimism in the minds of the people, that has been the hallmark of last 5 years. And even globally also, I mean, equity boom has been there. US had one of the largest and longest bull run, and that was driving the global equity markets, and India was no exception. So valuing companies in India, the second part is, valuing companies in India is a kind of, many times when we see the global comparison of the same companies, the except one factor is the growth factor. uh, potential growth factor. What they delivered is one thing, but what can be the growth rates for many businesses is different. And the longevity growth. I mean, one of the things of Indian equity markets is that if things work well for the company or for the sector, for the businesses, clearly the growth can be pretty high, and growth can be high for a very long time. So in financial sectors, and which is a very nascent sector, I would say, it's only 20 years that we have privatized the entire banking sector, insurance sector, which is probably 15 years privatized. So these sectors are gaining, one, from the economic growth, and second, the migration of the market share from the old public sector entities into the private sector. So the growth is predictable for very, very long time, and hence markets started giving very optimistic valuation to these entities. So I would say that one is the quality of businesses or and quality of management. This is one aspect of it, and second is the real differentiator, I would say, is the growth and growth potential of these companies for many years, and actually you can say even decades to come. At least I mean, what I've seen in 35, 40 years, this is a very predictable country, the direction of the economy, and but there is always some kind of a change in the momentum for prolonged period. And now data frequent, high frequency data is so much that you can see far more clearly what's happening. But in 90s also the uncertainties were there, and in the first decade also there were uncertainties. So it's a boom and bust kind of a cycle, and that's how it had been happening. The first bull run was in 85, then in 92, then 2000. 2000 was very global one, Y2K on the back of Y2K, and then 2007, 8 on the back of global financial boom. So, and then now it was again followed by what happened in the rest of the world, particularly US, and we also saw a peak here. So clearly, valuing equities in India or worldwide is becoming complex. The old theories which used to work in valuation tools stopped kind of functioning from 2015 onwards. I keep doing this wealth creation study every year, so I know the how the trend in valuation is changing. I have seen it from 2015 onwards. Conventional valuation tricks have stopped working. Where if you buy stocks at 25, say 15p, it will give you X return, and if you buy at 30, if you buy at 30p, then it will give you 0.5x or something like that. Higher the p multiple, lower the return. Lower the p multiple, higher the return. That was the story till 2015. After this, this trend is broken, and actually now market, if you look back, is giving significantly higher value to the growth. And if you look at the growth adjusted P multiple, markets have become far more reasonable. I mean, market is in advance valuing the growth. If the growth turns out to be right, you are winner. If growth doesn't turn out to be right, then market punishes you. That's been the story, and all the market is chasing growth, and probably it has gone overboard also in terms of valuing some of the not such a great quality business, but having growth potential, got exorbitant valuation, and they are all getting punished in this downturn. Yeah, so what are the businesses? I think one of the another pointer was, what are the businesses which are attractive in India and why? So, one of the unique thing about any business is the quality of business or quality of competition. One is the size of the opportunity, second is the competition. India is one country where per capita GDP itself is low, and hence size of the economy for 1.3 billion people at about close to 3 trillion is at per capita level, it is extremely moderate, or I would say low. And I would think, I mean, in my optimistic assessment, I would think there's only one way of going up. So, so there's a lot of growth potential in most of the businesses. But the funny part is that despite so much of growth is ahead, there is a lot of consolidation in the businesses. So most of the businesses have top 2 or 3 players are having 60, 70, 80% kind of a market share. And that's what is the that is the most coveted segments, and that's where you make money. And those are the businesses I would focus on in buying, putting my money in. So, and then always you keep getting newer opportunities like this COVID, which is putting the people into the homes, has brought to the fore the importance of video conferencing. And it is so much so that suddenly in 2 months' time, there is a death of distance and death of meeting rooms. And whenever anything gets digitized, it has always a positive effect also. One is that you need a lot of bandwidth, almost unlimited, sustained post-COVID also. I think these habits will not change. And the amount of travel we used to do meetings, I think that will definitely come down. I would not say completely eliminated, but definitely the frequency will come down. And so that would require a lot of bandwidth. Kids are having classes from the home. There are a whole lot of teaching going on cross border, across the world. People are learning unheard of things. So I think the bandwidth requirement is exploding by the day, and even more software will come, more services will come, and this adoption is going to be total. So I think telecom businesses, suddenly the outcome. So attractiveness of telecom businesses and some technology businesses, they look far better to me. Even after, at least post-COVID, that looks to be one business which is looking good. But the conventionally good business, like all the consumer-centric businesses, because India 60-65% of the GDP is spent on the consumers consumption, and consumers is a big theme here, and still the propensity to consume is very high because of the per capita income is low. So I would think that bulk of the investment should be around the consumer, because that is one of the most dependable source of profits and businesses. So my effort is always to build 80-90% of the portfolio around consumption, even if it is a services or goods or whatever, but something which is day-to-day needs of the people, and there is a consolidation, consumption-led growth, and consolidated kind of offering. That is, that is where exactly I have seen a lot of money is being made in the past, and hence that should be the theme of the portfolio. Last you wanted to touch was uh, what are the key drivers of success in India? So I think that goes that is a very global thing. I don't see anything completely new, except that I think US corporations have become very large and very professional managed, board managed, whereas in India still the first generation entrepreneurs are there and they're around, and in fact they're struggling to hand over to the next generation. In fact, the biggest challenge is how do you longevate the good management which the entrepreneur uh, imbibe, the value system, the tight processes, what the original entrepreneur brought into the company, which led to the massive success. Uh, how do you how how do you perpetuate that into the next round of the life of the corporation? So that's the challenging thing right now for some of the corporations. But I think entrepreneurial energy is high. The passion for the entrepreneurship is very high in India, and wherever there is a passion and good value system, I think another challenge is having good. In our framework, at least wherever good business is there, the real challenge is finding the good management. Now, in India, almost everybody is passionate because of the first generation money here. The issue is how many people are of the highest of the integrity. So wherever there is a good management, there is an integrity. So when the integrity and the passion comes together in a good business, I think that's where the wealth is created, and that's been the story of wealth creation across the board in India, and it is a repeated story. And what I have seen more recently in last 4-5 years is that you bought at any price, and yet in the good companies, good business managed by good managements have rewarded you. Now, whether it is right or wrong, something was looking to me expensive at 40p, and I didn't buy. The P multiple of these good companies have actually doubled in last 4 years. And though the earnings are not gone up by, maybe earnings have gone by 5-7%, but because of re-rating of the stocks, the total return to the investor is very high. So, so whenever you find a terrific business run by terrific management, and there is a growth potential, and somehow for some reason there is a reasonable pricing, I think we must go and bet. That's the formula which has worked for me, and still I buy in the same framework: QGLP, quality of business, quality of management, growth, and at a reasonable price. So that's been the driver of success for investing in India. I mean, in the corporate success is always a mirage, or I would say magic, which happens in every part of the world, and it has a very different. I mean, there is a running common theme for the management, but businesses have a different opportunities in different country. What can be done in US cannot be done in India. What can be done in India cannot be done in Australia. So we have to find in which country what kind of seeds they grow very rapidly. And I would think that manager's role or management's role is common across the world, but business opportunities are many times it's far more local. So that's what would be my summary of my understanding of Indian stock market, Indian businesses, and in a very limited way, Indian economy. So thank you very much for this. We can take few questions from here.
Sure. Mukundan, you want to go ahead?
Yeah. So there's a few questions. Firstly, as a value investor, let's say, if you're coming to Indian markets, then perhaps you can fall into the trap of looking at cyclical companies or metals, or even the government-owned entities like PSUs, which look optically cheap. Are those companies that you would invest in, as a if you are thinking about value in the traditional sense?
See, this classical value investing, the way it is defined in US, I'm not part of that gang. For me, value, as I said, my formula is QGLP, quality, growth, longevity at reasonable price. So I am of the firm view that every investor is a value investor. How he perceives value is his investment philosophy or his mathematics, I would say. So in my mind, very clearly, quality business, quality management, visible growth. I mean, these components are first. Longevity, growth, and longevity, quality first. Then only I look at the valuation. I don't start from cheapness and then look for the reason for buying. And that's another way of doing it. I'm not saying that is right wrong, but that has not worked for me. My DNA is very different. My DNA is, unless it's a top quality company or top quality business, at times you are ahead of the curve, and most of the time you're behind the curve in finding the company. Because once the company is successful, then everybody knows the story. But that's where the your edge comes in terms of where exactly you have that spot. But I have not been a great buyer of buying half book company or 7%, 8% dividend yield. That has not been my style. But that doesn't mean that may not work. So because there is a lot of value companies, and particularly the values are emerging not only in India, but when I talk to my friends in US and all, there also, wherever growth is missing, I think markets are running away from that. So clearly the dividend yield, the price to book of those companies, and typically those companies have weak franchises also. The return on equities also will be low, profits will be there, return on equities will be low, since growth will be low, the free cash will be reasonably high, and hence they can pay out dividends. So they look, and in India there is one of the problems is that if the company is trading very cheap, you cannot read it, because there is a lot of lot of protection for the promoters. Typically, the promoters, you cannot dethrone the promoters. So the markets cannot, cannot bid for the cheap assets that way. You cannot force the management to relook at the strategy. The way we hear a lot of stories in US. So that hostile bid cannot happen on a badly run or inefficiently priced stocks. So at least that is not my style, which works. So I'm in the most popular district of the market.
So you mentioned consumers, and consumerism is a large part of India's GDP. Given
Yes.
consumer behavior is changing rapidly globally, do you think
Yes.
That'll have a significant impact on India's consumer behavior going forward?
My belief is consumers are same all over the world. I mean, 6 months here and there. I mean, what Chinese will start doing, Indians might do 6 months later. Or adaptability is very global because of social media, television, internet. In fact, so I mean, all sorts of consumer stuff is becoming very global. I mean, the way yoga is being adopted all over the world, or anything. I mean, if you enter into any office, if you're not knowing what is the address where you're sitting, you go to. I mean, I've been to Saudi Arabia, Australia, Japan, America. I don't see any different in the corporate office. You sit into the room to meet a fund manager. It looks one the same. So I think the homogeneity of the consumer behavior is very, very, unless it is constrained by some local law. I think the behaviors are same, but the behavior itself will change. Like adaptability of the video conferencing for travel. I mean, I think we are supposed to meet in Mumbai, isn't it?
Yeah.
Yes.
And you imagine, so comfortably you're sitting at your home and I'm sitting here. Just that I would have loved to shake hands and, exchange few more greetings. But just the effort which is, and what I've realized, what changes actually is whatever gets digitized, there is a massive explosion. I mean, you cannot imagine where all it will go to. Like when the death of camera happened, the physical camera, where you used to put a physical reel, that Kodak thing, and you used to process it. How rare it was to take a photograph and put it up in your. You used to have your calendar and docket and everything. Today, I mean, every camera has thousands and millions of photographs taken by individual. So there's a complete explosion in photography, bypassing the old system. So I don't know what is going to happen to the world of meetings. As the meetings have become digitized, or there's a death of meeting rooms. So how the consumer behavior will change, how the corporate behavior will change, and what impact it will have into the, positively thinking, I would say the investor will be able to interact a lot more with the managers, with the businesses, and that will have definitely impact on travel of the any positive information or negative information into the marketplace. So that way, a lot of changes will happen. Yes.
Next one is, considering there's huge market share domination in India by the top 2 to 4 companies in mature industries or more mature industries.
Yeah.
What's your view on mid caps and small caps in India and providing excitement to the investor?
Yeah, so I think it's a good question. I don't have a very definitive answer, but what I see during this COVID period, this uncertain period, just one sec. Yeah. So can you hear me?
Yes.
Yeah. So during this, what were you talking about?
Sorry,
I
the
lost you.
question was about given the dominance of the largest 2 or 3 players in India in most industries, what's your thought process on small and mid caps being traditionally the exciting place to invest in India?
Yeah. So I would not be completely away from this, but I'll be 10 times more careful. because they are just by size of the opportunity, they are small or mid, or because some businesses are like rating agencies. They would be per se, it's not a mega industry. So I would still try to find a leader in a small business, and that will be fine with me. But per se, in a large business, I would be very, very wary of buying smaller companies. So like in banking space, I would be very careful in buying mid and small, because it will require a lot of stability. And we don't know right now how long this problem is going to go on and what will be the after effect of all this. As Buffett was saying in his speech, he was very, very emphatic. If you hear this 2nd May speech, he went to, he was scared or whatever. He was explaining that 1929-30 story of Great Depression, when markets collapsed first from 350 to 200 Dow, and Dow went from 200 to 250 to 60. And at that time, when it recovered, bounced back by 20-30%, the world thought that we are done and sorted. And what happened later on, for whatever reason, the Dow went from 250 to 42.11 in next 2 years. I mean, what happens in the future, nobody knows. But what I'm saying is that in that kind of situation, a smaller company, entity in a large ocean will get wiped out. Even if the business-wise they don't get wiped out, their valuation will be pathetic. So I would have tilt towards large cap in general, but very, very exotic small company which has a niche and leadership in that particular field. Even if it is a $500 million or something in market cap, I don't mind. But it'll be a spray. It'll be more of an exception than rule.
You wrote a paper, Understanding and Assessing Management Integrity in India. Could you share the major findings of that paper?
This was about management integrity, isn't it? So
Yeah.
we did.
Sir, I have it. I have that thing handy. If you.
Yeah. So why don't you read out the first, that 4-5 lines on the top?
Sure, sure. I'll do that.
So I'll be able to put my thoughts together.
Yeah, sure.
सुनता हमारा वेल्थ क्रिएशन स्टडी का कॉपी दे रहे थे और नया कॉपी तो पुराना है. Can you read that?
So just a minute, sir. I'm just opening and probably doing a screen share so that all of us can see. So yeah, can you see now, sir?
Yes.
Yeah. So these were the highlights. Yeah. You can talk to them.
Yeah. Now I can put my thoughts together. Sorry. So in equity investing, management is 90%. Industry is 9% and 1% everything else. So this was written by Peter Lynch. And so getting management integrity right is a critical first step in management assessment. Second, so this was all about the fudging the accounts. So there is only one way of writing honest accounts, but infinite ways of manipulating them. So and it is very tough to figure out various. I mean, you cannot have a mousetrap for all kinds of problems in the corporate accounts. But when you see a honest account, you can figure out this is an honest account. Everything else just doesn't matter. So we have to figure out the honest account, which company does the honest accounting, and we have to avoid the ones which have what you call compromised value system in accounting itself. Then sharp practices are to inflate profits and stuff the financial trash in balance sheet. So what they do in the accounts is that they decorate the P&L. They inflate the profits, and that they do through inflating the P&L. But the magic of double entry is such that you cannot live just by passing one entry. The second entry, which is called financial trash, goes into the balance sheet. So reading the balance sheet and figuring out how much trash is there is extremely important. And profit and loss is much easier to manipulate. Hence, management must be, yeah, so we are saying that cash flow is far more difficult to manipulate. So they should be mandatorily asked to publish it. But we have seen in last 10, 12 years, globally, the focus on cash flow has increased significantly. And as an investor, we should have a forensic mindset to figure out what is happening. But one of the things which is said in this is that keep looking for good management, bad management, and wherever you find that there is a lack of integrity in reporting, I think you must run away from the companies. I mean, first thing is to avoid. But if by chance the company is already in your portfolio, then don't hesitate, run, because these companies are going to definitely get, it will definitely crash land at some point of time. So that's what is the summary of, basically avoiding the companies with compromised value system and accounting.
Do you think that India has a greater share of those companies that are compromising, or it's the same as anywhere else in the world?
I don't have knowledge of companies outside India because we are India specialist, and I've seen more of this here because we have a lot of listed companies. I mean, except for America and Japan, India is probably the third largest country or second largest company in terms of number of listing. So absolutely, there must be a lot more companies would be having compromised value system in India because of numbers. But I think the practices are, even in the deepest of the capital markets, that is US, you keep hearing crazy things. So I wouldn't know how, but the incentive structure is such that this must be prevalent all over. It must be quite common in every country. In some countries, it might be easier to get away, and in some countries, it may not be. Like US is very punishing in the sense that the moment it is found, they can literally from hero to zero, they hammer it, and all kinds of criminal arrest and everything happens. So that fear of punishment in US must be keeping a lot of people at bay. In India, still I think people can get away, and hence I would think it will be a little more in India.
Okay, just two more questions.
Yes.
The next one is, if you could only buy one company in India to have in your portfolio of one, which company would it be and why?
You're talking about today or 20?
Yeah, going forward for the next
yeah,
5
going
to 10
forward.
years.
That's what I'm saying. So,
yeah,
I'm you're Mr.
Hello. Mukundan.
Yeah.
Mukundan. Yeah, Mukundan. I'll tell you. I've done well in the markets. I've made a lot of money, but I'm telling you, this question is a very trick question, and sometimes I'm right, sometimes I'm so horribly wrong. If you had asked me just say 5-6 months back, I would have said AU Bank, and the highest correction in the market is in that particular company right now. That AU Small Finance Bank. So it has a nature of, typically today I will buy, say, Bharti Airtel today, but I don't know. What I have seen is that I have had 2-3 very big success in buying stocks, and they were 100 beggars for me while I stayed with them. Like first was the Hero Honda, then Infosys, then Bharti Airtel in 2003. So these have given very large gains to me, and I have been able to successfully sell after 80 times or 100 times in my portfolio. Sometimes it is in 2-3 years, sometimes in 8-10 years. But I don't think it's about buy and hold forever. I'm not of that camp. When the growth, if the quality goes away, you have to run that very day. But if growth is gone, typically fantastic companies, they have a growth phase and then they have a stabilization phase because nothing can go to the sky. The moment growth starts slowing down, the P multiple also starts going down. And at that point of time, I think you should book your profits, and whether you are selling at 80% of the peak or 100% of the peak or 50% of the peak, I think you must run. So that's been my style of investing. I can be there for 3 years. I can be there for 20 years. I think in Hero Honda, I was there for 18 years. And I did about almost 100x plus dividends. So, so I would think today Bharti looks good, but it's not that that's the only stock which will make our portfolio.
Okay, and you talked about corporate profit to GDP slowing from above 4 to below 3. Where do you think, given we've been through COVID and we've been through a slowdown economically, where do you think in the next 5 years corporate profit to GDP could get to?
See, I mean, it is a crazy thing. I mean, in US, I mean, this concept we learned from Buffett's essays. Buffett essay in 2000 he wrote in Fortune magazine. Probably that's the only essay he wrote outside his annual report. So there he talked about this concept of corporate profit to GDP. And since then, it has been tabulated and it is available for almost the whole world. Right now, just before the crash, US was at, I think, double-digit corporate profit to GDP. So more like 10-11% from 3. And the band he was mentioning in that report, he has done some 40-50 years of study, and there he said it is between 3 to 7 in US. So it's all business cycle and country's own position in the global economy, some sweet spots, some at some point of time, and the corporate profit starts ballooning. And I would think that we are at the closer to the bottom than the top. Now, whether in 2003 to 2007, when this commodity boom was there, and banks were making a lot of money, all the commodity companies were making money, we went from less than 2% to 7.5% at the peak. From 7.5%, we have come down. Now, in 2021, it will be less than 2% for sure. So I think we have hit the bottom for sure. Now, from here, whether it will go back to 5, which is a like 15-20 years average, and nothing, it's like a pendulum. If the average is 5, it will go down to 2, but other side it will go to 8 or 9. So whenever good, now what will bring it to the good time for Indian economy or Indian corporate profits? That is anybody's speculation. But I would think the potential is to go as, I mean, I'm just drawing from the history that we have seen corporate profit to GDP up as high as 7%. But I would think 4 to 5% is very reasonable.
And I would, it'd probably be remiss if I left without asking you this question on India's largest listed company, which is Reliance Industries. And they have a business called Jio Platforms, which every man and his dog seems to be interested in taking a stake in. You know, what's your thoughts on that, and where is that going?
I had not been, just to put the records straight, I had not been big fan of this company, and I have suffered, let me tell you, because it is very large part of the indexes. So, and ultimately when you manage public money, you are fighting against the index. So that has been a very large kind of punishment to me for staying away from the company. But I think the moment Mark Zuckerberg bought into this, Facebook bought into this, then I think this digital game is very crazy. I don't understand this well. But what has happened in China, what has happened in all these $1 trillion plus companies, they have internet play somewhere or other. And Mukesh Bhai is hell-bent. I mean, literally has bet the entire company onto building the telecom platform, and on top of it, the Jio platform, Jio Mart or whatever. And I understand up to telecom, but beyond that, what is potential and how this game will be played in terms of regulatory changes and where the world will go, how they will play. But they have their game plan, and he's extremely good in execution. I'm stunned by what he has been able to achieve in telecom in 3.5 years, 4 years. So he has a massive execution capability. He has resources. He has clarity of thought. He's very driven. So, and now very brilliant partners are coming. It's not only money bags. These are all guys who matter in the, if you see their track records of where the, I mean, Silver Lake guys or Mark Zuckerberg definitely would have better view of the future than me trying to figure out where the JioMart is going. So I think it's a probabilistic event, whether they'll be successful or not, and how big will be the success in the years to come. So I would remain optimistic. But right now, my optimism is coming from what is going to happen to the bandwidth, demand for the bandwidth, and Jio being number one. So what 45-50% share in Indian telecom market, that gives me more comfort right now, tangibly. Then it's a plus on telecom plus, whatever happens to JioMart.
Thank you very much for your time. I think everyone, considering it's almost 6 o'clock in Australia, where on a Friday where most people have already switched off, you've still got a good audience and people listening in intently into what you say. So we really appreciate your time and your thoughts, given your successful career, and again, appreciate you allocating some time for us.
No, thank you. It was my pleasure.
Thank you. Thank you, sir. Thank you, everyone.
Thanks, everyone. I appreciate your participation in this conference organized by India Avenue and Motilal Oswal. Happy to send out presentations and information next week, and appreciate your participation and time. Thank you.
Thank you, everyone. Have a nice weekend. Bye-bye.
Bye.